Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the second Big Data Forum. It's a continuation of what we started with a lot of success and many partners last year. And I'm extremely pleased to start it off today with already a very nice list of partners and speakers that will take you through today. The Big Data Forum, as most of you have seen in the registration on our agenda, will offer you 2 days of altogether 13 sessions that we will use to look at how big data can contribute to building a smarter future for Trinidad and Tobago, but also the wider Caribbean, going across all sectors. It's a conversation and an exchange that we started last year with many of you and many more, and that we want to continue this year. What makes, of course, the Big Data Forum so special are all our partners from the private sector, the government, and academia. And we're really delighted that we see many of you coming back from last year, but many new ones having joined and registered for those 2 days. We have colleagues join us live online from across the sector and many around the globe. Private sector partners from Facebook, Microsoft, iFlyTech, and many, many more. And we're really looking forward to making these 2 days very engaging and very transparent and open in the sort of questions that we all want to look at when talking about big data in its importance for the future of Trinidad and Tobago, and as I said, the wider Caribbean. Today, of course, we have the pleasure of starting with a keynote address by the Honorable Minister of Energy and Energy Industry, Stuart Young. Good morning, Minister. I can see you're already online. And
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Marina.
Good morning. But just before we get started with Minister Young, I would like to hand over the floor. I'm really, really happy to welcome Rosemary Kalapurakal, Deputy Director of the UN Development Coordination Office, our headquarters in New York, who will help us to get started on those 2 days, just with a few words on why data analytics, data science are so important from the perspective of us at the United Nations, especially in this last stretch of trying to reach the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Rosemary, thank you so much for joining. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Marina. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marina. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm so honored to join all of you today. Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, distinguished members of government, leaders of the business community, members of academia and research institutions, and our dear guests and forum participants. It is my great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Development Coordination Office, which manages the resident coordinator system, to the second Big Data Forum in Trinidad and Tobago. Last year's virtual forum was a landmark event and attracted over 1,200 participants, establishing Trinidad and Tobago as a leading advocate for big data discussion and usage in the Caribbean. And I want to add, Marina and Mr. Young, that we often use this example from Trinidad and Tobago to also inspire the work of our other offices in 131 other locations as well. The UN in Trinidad and Tobago is among our leading UN country teams, and together with government partners and industry leaders, is paving the way on multi-stakeholder partnerships for big data, but with the emphasis on for the social good. What the government, the UN, civil society, and other partners are doing here in this forum should be seen as a model to other countries in both advanced and emerging economies alike, everywhere. And I'm really hoping that with the support of our resident coordinator and the offices that are connected to their sister offices everywhere else, we can take away some of the learning and inform what we do elsewhere as well. With that in mind, we look forward to sharing the outcomes of this discussion throughout our network and with the UN everywhere. Now, a few words on the program itself. I congratulate the program committee for designing the events that cut across the role of society, education, technology within the coming artificial intelligence revolution. Well, I shouldn't say coming, it has in many senses already arrived. The program separates what is science fiction from practical reality with real-world applications. More importantly, the forum provides a platform for partnerships. Partnerships being the essential ingredient, a critical success factor for building a modern data ecosystem. Data is the lifeblood of any organization, and the UN is no different. Our world is bursting with information, and I'd like to add misinformation, disinformation as well. And yet we have a lack of credible data where we need it most, in and about the poorest and most marginalized communities. Data-driven and evidence-based decision-making is a prerequisite for identifying, prioritizing, adapting to development solutions, to development challenges, and providing the solutions, as well as a necessary condition for identifying and reaching those furthest left behind. And to me, those who control the data also control the narrative, control the resources. If you were to do a Google search for data is the new, you will be given the following autocomplete options. Data is the new oil. Data is the new gold. Data is the new economy, the new currency, the new religion. But perhaps my favorite, data is the new oil. The metaphor best encapsulates both the promise and the challenges of the data revolution that we are living through. It is the basis onto which all else stems from: information, knowledge, insights, forecasting, and so on. Farmers don't grow crops simply because they have fertile soil. They have a clear and compelling goal to feed people. Big data is no different. It should be driven by a clear and compelling use case and goal with a focus on meaningful impact. And that is why it is so important to have the government leadership to direct us towards the uses for which big data needs to be co-opted, and establish the strong roots that are needed with the support of all stakeholders. These roots support the data flows by providing the necessary infrastructure that enables the actionable insights to be successfully delivered and sustained. Roots are typically unseen, but they're absolutely critical. And if the roots are not strong and healthy, the plant will die. Critical to our shared success, therefore, is that we acknowledge early on the importance of establishing a robust data infrastructure and multi-stakeholder ecosystem. And too often in the world of development, those data communities have been very siloed, from the formal and official statistics to the private sector, to the community users and generators of data. But if we have to work in the new reality, the new development context in which we have to be effective, this kind of shared ecosystem is going to be critical. The COVID pandemic has undeniably thrust the world into a new reality. And yet, at the global level, we do not yet have a conceptual agreed framework and language for data stewardship, meaning we do not yet have a global system of resilient data governance that is built on strong partnerships, one that is well balanced between providing effective data sharing against robust data privacy protection mechanisms, and one that would help us reap the social and economic benefits of data for our wide range of users, while protecting local entrepreneurship and business interests. I don't have to tell anyone in the Caribbean or in a small island developing state that you know very well that the global problems we face today that require global solutions do not see the kind of global coordination and leadership that is needed. And that is why in the kind of initiatives that you are taking, you're not waiting for the global leadership. And I applaud you for that, because perhaps there needs to be a more multilateral networked solution that with the support of the United Nations, we can help build up from the ground up. One of the things we have learned through the pandemic to date is that data stewardship takes different meanings and implications depending on the local context, the specific data community where it is applied. National actors must build a model for data stewardship that is right for the local context. I wish to acknowledge the UN Resident Coordinator, Marina Walter, a fantastic leader and a dear friend, for the leadership of her office as well as the entire UN country team on this issue. It is clear that where there is strong data literacy, data savviness among the leadership, the UN will be able to partner more effectively with governments, private sector, and the entire community to take forward innovative approaches seamlessly. I wish you all a fruitful and successful forum. And I thank you very much for inviting me. Back to you, Marina.
Rosemary, thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you've also been running in between meetings, so really appreciate it that you came online to send us off. I think that would bring us now very quickly to the first session, getting started. And it's my true pleasure to once more welcome the Honorable Minister Young. But I would like to also immediately welcome Dr. Paul Baay to this session. We will get started with a keynote by the Minister, but as it's our practice, I would just like to provide a little bit of a background why it is so exciting to have the two of them come in with the keynote and the following panel discussion. Obviously, for everyone in Trinidad and Tobago, Minister Stuart Young is quite known, not new, but a graduate of law of St. Mary's College and the University of Nottingham and a member of Parliament since 2015. He served first as a minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, and since then has served in several ministerial capacities as Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, of course, as Minister of Communication, Minister of National Security. Since 2021, now in his new role as Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, in addition to his continuous duties as Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, I think he's our go-to guy for many topics and a face that we very often bring on and love to have as an expert who really adds on explaining where the government is heading, the sort of policies Trinidad and Tobago foresees and wants to set country and society on for this, path of the future. So welcome back, Minister Young. Before giving you the floor, I would like to also immediately introduce Paul Baay, because we're very excited to have him here. President and CEO of Touchstone Exploration. As I said in the beginning, the beauty of this big data forum is really that we bring partners together from across very different sectors. And Mr. Baay, of course, has more than 25 years of experience leading oil and gas exploration and production companies. So it's the sort of expert we want to have in this discussion, really from a very practical on-the-ground experience point of view. A graduate of the University of Western Ontario, he's currently the Touchstone Exploration's president and CEO. He established Touchstone Energy and was chief executive officer for many, many years. Before that, Mr. Baay was managing director of Abacus Energy, a senior officer of True Energy, chair of the board of directors of Vero Energy, and the chair of the board of directors of Request Seismic Surveys. And I could continue this line because having read your CV, a very impressive array of experiences, and it's really a pleasure that you agreed to come on, listen jointly to Minister Young, and then join in hopefully a very engaging panel discussion. Thank you both, gentlemen, and Minister, the floor is yours with the keynote.
Thank you very much, and good morning to Marina and to Paul. Good to see you both, and to all who are here with us today. It's indeed a great privilege and a pleasure to be able to share some thoughts, views with you, give you a perspective, and then for us to engage in what I hope will be a very enlightening and good panel discussion. So it's my pleasure today to participate in this second installment on the UNTT's role of big data technologies and analytics. The amount of data generated globally will be growing exponentially and has been growing exponentially as we move forward into the future. The current reality is that the world is being powered by big data. However, what we must question is what is driving this development. Today, people as well as businesses generate data from millions of sources at an unprecedented rate. These data sources include the increasing number of internet users conducting daily online transactions, the trend by organizations to digitization, and the capacity of advanced embedded devices and systems to collect and share data. Once global data started to grow, it has shown no signs of slowing down, and I dare say it will not slow down. It's aggregated mainly via the internet, including social networks, by Internet of Things devices and sensors. These are the key drivers for the global big data market growth. Significantly, big data is still an enigma to many people as it is a relatively new term. And while it may still be ambiguous to many people, it has become increasingly important for reasons which I will demonstrate. The vast assemblage of data, which is referred to as big data, is huge in size, hard to stock, investigate, and transform with conventional tools of management. This data is complex and cannot be processed by traditional methods. Big data is set to eventually take the lead in various business aspects, such as research, sales, production, and the business planning, thereby leading to a new industrial revolution. The technology has substantial opportunities and the capability to uncover profound insights when explored and safely explored. Given its capabilities, data is steadily being integrated into the private organizations as well as the public sector and is becoming vital to proper decision making. With mobile phones and access to internet becoming the norm, the public sector itself spawns a mammoth amount of data in energy, education, employment, agriculture, and manufacturing. Data science is significantly aiding governments in becoming more efficient, detecting and minimizing fraud, maintaining transparency, boosting the economy and productivity. This is being achieved by public sector organizations collaborating with the private sector to deliver services more efficiently, swiftly, and with greater precision to meet the needs and requirements of the citizens. This surge in data has led to the rise of big data analytics. It is a complex process of analyzing big data to help organizations, including governments, to make informed data-driven decisions and to use it to identify new opportunities for more efficient operations, higher returns on investments. This is the age of big data, and the use of data analytics will become more and more extensive across industries and governments. Data has been coined, as we heard our introductory speaker say, as the new oil of the digital economy. The Internet of Things has enabled everything digital to be connected directly or indirectly. This hyperconnectivity between people, data, processes, and things is disrupting the way data management and analytics used to be. One of the challenges is how do we safely harness this data? New integrated platforms share data across groups and devices, making connections like never before. The increase of internet-connected devices across all industries has fundamentally altered how companies do business. Data analytics make it possible for companies to automate and refine their day-to-day operations. As a result, businesses that leverage data analytics are able to make effective, real-time decisions, enabling them to achieve more value and increased organizational efficiency in a shorter space of time than before. Many national and international organizations, in collaboration with governments, are resorting to the application of big data analytics across various sectors that benefit the society and improve the economy, including in oil and gas exploration, national and natural resource management, banking and securities, manufacturing, insurance, healthcare, and education. Trinidad and Tobago is a member of the globalized international community, which has undergone significant change as a result of scientific, technological development and innovation. government, as part of the digital transformation, is using ICT, information and communication technologies, as a vehicle for the delivery of public goods and services and strengthening of institutional capacity. All government entities are now online, and information on government services can be found on the government portal, TT Connect. The aim is to deploy ICTs to transform operations of government ministries and agencies to a state where digital becomes the default, yielding time and cost savings, delivering services efficiently and effectively. The government intends to use ICT more and more to reduce inefficiency and increase productivity. This has moved a bit too slow for my liking, and I'm hoping that now, with the creation of a Ministry of Digital Transformation, specific emphasis will be played on moving the government along quicker in this direction, because it is essential. The ultimate objective is to create a digital economy in which electronic transactions are the norm of doing business, in which we become a supplier of digital goods and services, and in which our citizens are equipped with the skills and access to apply technology online productively. To this end, we'll be embarking on enabling an e-legislative framework, a digital developer incubation hub, and a technical digital skills training program. This investment in human capital will serve to empower individuals and innovators who can work closely with governments and the private sector to improve data collection methods and analysis of capacity of public and private institutions to optimize the productive utilization of our respective resources. A core requirement for big data analytics is to access affordable and fast internet. Governments of developing countries are rolling out national fiber optic backbones within their countries to increase access to reasonably priced broadband connectivity. Trinidad and Tobago is in the forefront of this development. We have provided and continue to provide free broadband access in highly populated areas and underserved communities, as well as fully operational ICT access centers. We will aim to increase these initiatives. In fact, dealing with COVID-19 in the past 2 years, we have seen as a government the gaps that exist and the areas where some of our less fortunate in society don't have that level of accessibility to these internet services that are required. And I can tell you, the audience, that the government is looking actively at how do we close that gap? How do we deal with these inefficiencies to make it more effective and less inequity in our citizens having access to this all-important internet? Regionally, a task force has been established by CARICOM to provide an opportunity for the region to deliver a more collaborative, coordinated, and innovative approach to meeting the digital skills challenge. The objective being to address digital inclusion and to proliferate skills across the CARICOM in a comprehensive, strategic manner to add another important layer to being a community for all. To this end, the CARICOM Secretariat will be embarking in 2020 on an ICT sector gap analysis across the whole of CARICOM, with funding provided under the 11th European Development Fund. This gap analysis will support the efforts of the regional governments, including Trinidad and Tobago, in the identification and quantification of critical parts of our digital infrastructure and to help fast-track digital transformation. Data analytics are facilitated by big data technologies, which utilize software that incorporates data mining, storage, sharing, data visualization, data framework, including tools and techniques used to investigate, transform, and analyze data. The harnessing of the power of big data analytics tools and techniques provides the users with the means to examine data sets and derive actionable insights. Data analytics, business intelligence platforms come in a variety of shapes and sizes to meet the ever-changing needs of organizations and the increasingly complex big data environments. So far, the market is dominated by blue chip companies such as Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, and Google. However, there is room for startup companies to define their space in this evolving technology. This is the rationale behind the government's establishment of a digital incubator hub, the grant of tax exemption and research and development capital allowance to companies whose core business activities are digitization and technology solutions. The government considered it and thought that this was a good first step to push our innovators, to allow them that space and that breathing room to get into this big data analytics and the whole of society approach that is needed. Big data is already transforming business, governments, other aspects of the economy. The OECD has determined that countries will benefit greatly from data analytics in terms of economic and social gains with increased investment in big data, data sharing and reuse. However, there must be a balance between the sharing of data and individuals and organizations' legitimate concerns with respect to privacy, security, and intellectual property rights. This, for me personally, is a big concern. Data and data analytics have become an essential driver of innovation, akin to scientific research and development. In this regard, the infrastructure in the digital economy include not only broadband networks, cloud computing, but also the data itself. Industries that have been assessed to benefit most from the use of big data and analytics include the travel industry, energy, insurance, finance, and agriculture. In the case of energy, and particularly the oil and gas industry, its massive data sets have grown with the advent of data recording sensors in exploration, drilling, and production operations. In fact, Paul, you would recall from your people here in Trinidad, I was fortunate enough to go down to Touchstone's exploration operations down in the south part of Trinidad and see firsthand the seismic activity that was being done. And this fits directly into this conversation we're having today. This has led to the use of big data and analytics by companies to recover more oil and gas out of hydrocarbon reservoirs, reduce capital and operational expenses, increase the speed and accuracy of investment decisions, and improve health and safety while mitigating environmental risk, especially in this rapidly changing global environment of the energy sector and the need now to balance the reduction of carbon and the reduction of harmful greenhouse gas emissions. How do we use data and factor that in whilst we balance the speeding up of the use of hydrocarbon resources, especially in small countries like Trinidad and Tobago? A study of oil companies undertaken by Accenture and Microsoft established that 86 to 90% of respondents said that an increase in their data, analytic capabilities, use of mobile technologies in the field, and banking more on industrial Internet of Things would increase the value of their businesses. Other studies have shown that companies employing that big data would generate higher value, productivity, and output growth than their peers. From a government perspective, it was determined that the employment of big data and analytics would boost annual income, reduce corruption, which again, personally for me, is a big ticket item, improve better workplace conditions, increase energy efficiency, and improve our foreign trade. The worldwide big data and business analytics market that was valued at US $193.14 billion in 2019 is projected to increase in value to US $420.98 billion by 2027. The surge in adoption of big data analytics software by various organizations to deliver enhanced and faster decision-making contributes towards the growth of the global big data and business analytics market. In addition, an increase in demand for cloud-based big data analytics software among small and medium enterprises positively impacts the growth of this market. In Trinidad and Tobago, based on contribution to gross domestic product, GDP, the energy sector will benefit from big data and analytics. With a contribution of 33% of GDP, the energy sector is a major contributor to the economy. The energy industry comprises 4 sectors: upstream oil and gas sector, midstream sector, downstream sector, and the power industry. The upstream sector is responsible for the exploration, development of crude oil and natural gas. The midstream is responsible for transportation and distribution of crude oil and natural gas. Downstream utilizes natural gas as a feedstock in the production of the finished products. Power industry is responsible for power generation and transmission. While all components are interrelated in the upstream is the lifeblood of the domestic energy sector. The upstream was developed from a fledgling sector of 1,200 barrels of oil equivalent per day in the early 1990s to the current production of over 550,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. How did we achieve this transformation? The answer lies in the advancement of technology. How will we stay competitive? The answer also lies in the advancement of technology. The oil and gas industry has always been in the forefront of technology change. The past decade has been marked by the presence of digital technologies, from process digitization to robotics and automation, and advanced analytics powered by machine learning, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things. These technological advances and improvements in seismic acquisition devices, fluid front monitoring geophones, carbon capture and sequestration have provided vast amounts of data to be processed and analyzed. All this data combined makes up big data in the energy sector. But big data in its raw form is of very little value and use. Big data analytics is a process used to extract, among other things, meaningful insights, such as hidden patterns, unknown correlations, market trends, and to facilitate better decision-making and reduction of risk. Processing large amounts of generated data by individuals for a complex problem is impossible and results in significant delay and uncertainty. Real-time and fast processing of data is crucial in the oil and gas industry. Big data analytics enables the rapid processing and analysis of large amounts of data sets. In the energy industry, we can distinguish different cases for using big data analytics. In the upstream, big data analytics are used to store and analyze seismic data, to optimize drilling processes, and to improve reservoir engineering in locating our petroleum resources. In the midstream, big data infrastructure is used to store and analyze transport data in real time to ensure the safe logistics of their energy product. In the downstream, big data technology has been employed to reduce downtime and maintenance costs of the refining equipment, thus improving asset management. I dare say that these big data pools in the downstream, in the upstream, and in the midstream right now have to be utilized as the world moves towards the reduction of the dangerous greenhouse gas emissions and moves towards carbon storage, sequestration, injection, and these other methods that we must employ urgently to save the planet Earth. In the power industry, data analytics enables providers to deliver new services and savings to customers through utility-led energy efficiency programs and predictive maintenance. In summary, big data analytics enables companies to transform enormous data sets into sound decisions, reduced operational costs, extended equipment lifespan, and lower environmental impact. There's a correlation between the effectiveness of analytics projects, and the adoption rate of advanced technologies. Technology acts as an enabler for business transformation. Advanced analytics technologies makes organizations more agile in terms of keeping pace with changing business trends and customer needs. There are tremendous benefits to be gained from the employment of big data analytics by the domestic energy industry. The application by upstream companies in the application of big data analytics has provided a major boost in the identification of carbon resources in the exploration activities of oil and gas companies operating in Trinidad and Tobago. I personally have seen this along with the Prime Minister as we traveled and as we met with companies. I saw it with Touchstone as a small independent oil producer, to the large multinationals such as BP, Shell, BHP, and EOG, when they show us how they were using data analytics and their big data mindsets, especially in seismic data, to reduce the risk of where they would go exploring for hydrocarbons. In the midstream, you'd be pleased to know that a state-owned national gas company of Trinidad and Tobago owns and operates a pipeline distribution and transmission pipeline network of approximately 1,000 kilometers of onshore and offshore pipelines for the supply of gas to final consumers. On a daily basis, substantial amounts of data are either generated in order to manage this pipeline network safely or to ensure that it is operated optimally. To this end, NGC has developed a 3-year technology strategy to use data as a strategic asset to improve its agility in decision-making, its operational safety and reliability, and process efficiency. The key elements include a business intelligence, BI, and an analytics program, which are augmented by a data warehouse and the implementation of industrial Internet of Things technologies. The use of industrial Internet of Things technologies and big data analytics will improve the detection of pipeline leaks and predictive maintenance, thereby reducing downtime, operating expenses, and protecting our environment. In the downstream, there's a universal recognition of the value of big data technologies and analytics. Digital technologies can play key roles in process plants and allow efficient information sharing and data analytics. Using the insights provided by these technologies can help drive greater asset reliability, lower operating costs, reduce risk, and enhance operational performance. In this regard, companies have sought to establish within their organizations a data and analytics capability and capacity to improve and create value in new and innovative ways. The power sector of Trinidad and Tobago has one of the lowest electricity rates in the world, consequent on the subsidy borne by us, the taxpayers, and the state. Power generation planning and economic load dispatch are two most important decision-making processes in power generation. By the application of big data analytics, TNTech will be able to effectively match energy supply and demand on the grid, thereby improving energy production efficiency and reducing production costs. This ultimately leads to a reduction in the financial burden to us, the taxpayers, and the state. In 2022, the construction of the country's first renewable energy project, a solar utility project with a capacity of 112.2 megawatts, is scheduled to commence. Solar energy is another important grid component that can benefit from big data analytics. Solar energy can be variable, and therefore weather conditions can significantly affect the output of solar utility project. By processing weather data, such as temperature, atmospheric pressure, humidity, cloud cover, data analytics will enable a more accurate and efficient forecasting of solar power generation. The information generated will allow for consolidation with loads from other sources by the grid, provide reliability, and reduce costs. Data analytics can provide information to ensure a cleaner environment by creating a more efficient industry, which would assist in less carbon emissions and better use of energy, resulting in overall lower costs. In this regard, Trinidad and Tobago has launched a digital platform for tracking carbon emissions and mitigating the impacts, known as the Knowledge Management System, KMS. It is the central database of National Climate Mitigation Monitoring, Reporting, and Verification System. KMS is a web-based database designed to identify, collect, record, and analyze data and information coming from different sources and institutions. The system provides an interface between government and stakeholders and allows for continuous flow of verified data that tracks the progress in reducing carbon dioxide emissions. Big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning have witnessed exponential growth over the past few years. With the evolving technology, businesses realize the importance of incorporating big data and artificial intelligence into their operations. While the technologies create exciting new opportunities for companies and entrepreneurs, their adoption is also partnered with several complexities and risks, hence the need for regulations. Regulators and policymakers find it difficult to keep track of the constant developments in technology and AI systems. Regulators on the global governance level are trying to keep themselves updated with growing number of AI developments to ensure the laws and regulations stay relevant with new challenges and inventions. Unfortunately, in my view, that horse has bolted, and we're now all playing catch up as to how, for example, we protect an individual's personal private information when they're surfing the internet, etc. Again, a personal concern of mine. The regulations define the enhancement of public sector policies and laws for the use and promotion of big data, AI, and machine learning technologies. The laws and regulations are mandatory to manage the associated risks with big data and AI. The Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries is responsible for the regulation of the petroleum and mineral sectors in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The ministry is a recipient of data emanating from exploration and development of hydrocarbons and the quarrying activities. This information is received daily, monthly, quarterly, and as needed from operators from these sectors via a ministry online portal, emails, as well as hard copy submissions. Based on specific legislation, the data required from operators has been standardized to facilitate better analysis. Moreover, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries employs industry standard applications in the analysis of unstructured and semi-structured data sourced from these sources, these sectors. Big data technologies and data analytics will allow the ministry not only to administer the energy and mining sectors, but also to assist operators to function more efficiently. Big data technologies can be implemented alongside various digital platforms to allow for an even greater digital ecosystem. This augurs well for digital platforms already in place, such as the Enterprise Geographic Information System and the ministry's proposed National Energy Data Repository. The Enterprise Geographic Information System has been implemented to facilitate the storage, sharing, and dissemination of geospatial products, such as maps and data. Further development of the system would allow authorized users to have access to information via the click of a button through an online platform where one can view a map and see what data is available and to determine interest. This plays directly into the deepwater bid round that the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago approved last week, and that is being launched. And in fact, I'll be leading a team to Houston, leaving this weekend to go and promote our deepwater bid rounds. And data analytics, and the storage, the data that is stored here at the ministry will be utilized in this exercise. The National Energy Data Repository will provide physical access for data viewing of archived data by stakeholders, as well as online access to digital data. This project is an extension of the work already in the pipeline to build the MEEI Corporate Master Data Store, as well as the existing need for suitable storage for the Ministry of Energy's data. All energy data that is collected by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries will be amalgamated into this National Energy Data Repository. Big data technologies will allow the ministry to extract and process data stored and captured in this National Energy Data Repository in its management of the sector on behalf of and for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. In keeping with government's 2030 vision to be a leader in digitization, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries has realized the strategic value in big data technology. Currently in the early stage of planning and implementation, we are well on the way to full adoption of big data technology and data analytics, as well as establishing this National Energy Data Repository in alignment with the government's objective. As the world continues to advance in the use of technology, so should we in Trinidad and Tobago. And so we must adopt in our approach to data capture, storage, and analysis, while facilitating data interoperability, and exchange between authorized stakeholders. The ICT-based systems that are used must ensure and secure the security, safety, and confidentiality of the data for the users. The adoption of big data technologies and analytics will facilitate more efficient regulation, improve decision-making, make operations more efficient, and improve business performance. Ultimately, the use of technologies would benefit the economy and, by extension, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Big data has been shown to create substantial value in many sectors that translates to productivity, improvement for economies, and bring consumers benefits and conveniences. However, the barriers to overcome are just as real as the potential of technology. Investment in technology alone will not be sufficient to derive the benefits of big data and analytics. Shortages of talent, inadequate management practices, data policy and security issues will need to be overcome to ensure that the economic benefits are derived. Therefore, understanding the positives and drawbacks is critical in order to reap the benefits of big data and analytics. What is clear is that big data and analytics are not limited to big companies. It is becoming widespread and is seen as an important technological tool for progressive companies, institutions, and governments. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Marina and her team for putting together this second conference on big data. And importance for Trinidad and Tobago cannot be overemphasized or underemphasized. Marina, thank you. Thank you to everyone, to the audience, for your patience and for your attention. And I look forward to sharing in the panel discussion. Thank you.
Minister, thank you so much for this in-depth outline, in fact, of what not only you and your ministry are intending to do to really carve out a way of using data analytics, using big data and supporting the environment in Trinidad and Tobago, but also to really take an outlook on the wider government. Really fascinating too. And also I liked how you underscored that big data is an entirely new source of data and provides new unprecedented opportunities for development use in the energy sector and beyond the actual generated purposes of much of the data. I like your reference to the new industrial revolution. I think that's very much called for, but also, of course, your hints to the concerns around privacy and security.
Absolutely,
because that's the other part of the equation. We heard that strongly also coming through in the first big data forum by users, by companies. So thank you so much for really setting us off on the right path. I would like to now bring in Mr. Baay and also open it up to some Q&A questions, comments from the around 140 participants we have right now. For all of you participating, please use the Q&A function at the bottom to your right to just send in any question you might have, any comment you might have. For both of our panelists. And we were going to take another roughly 15-20 minutes to just take in and respond to some of your comments. And maybe to get started, Mr. Baay, if I can ask you, in preparation of the big data forum, we heard some of your colleagues in the sector saying that finding data is as hard as finding oil. And I think that's probably something the minister also referred to. But as a very successful international organization in the oil and gas sector, what does Touchstone, so to say, see as the sort of benefits by adopting big data technology and analytics and tools within the oil industry? Over to you.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much. And thank you, Minister, and thank you for including me on the panel this morning. Trinidad's really in a really unique situation in that they have this ability from a big data point of view to both look backwards and look forwards. And when I say that, our business has been around for over 100 years, not our business, but the oil and gas energy business has been around in Trinidad for over 100 years. And something north of 20,000 wells have been drilled in Trinidad. So you just think about that massive data set that exists in this historical data, both in wells have been drilled and the seismic that's already been shot. And the minister has referred to that. And now what we can do is look forward and reprocess some of that old data, whether it's the old seismic data or quite frankly, the old log data from the old wells that were drilled, and use that technology to go back and really rework some of the old data to find new resources, new opportunities, which is exactly what we've had the opportunity to do on the island. And it really is remarkable. But you touch on the point about it being hard to find that data. If you can imagine that most of the data from the past 100 years is basically written on paper, and to get it digitized into a format that can be used is really the challenge on the exploration side. I know the ministry is working in that direction, and so is industry. But that, I think that's really what also presents the opportunity for how we can use that data. And it's also pretty exciting for our new our new employees, new people that are graduating from the various institutions, you know, this is a challenge for them to get involved in an industry that is maybe not as much focused on sort of that, what I'll call traditional energy business, but is more focused on sort of the data side, the technology side. How do we use technology to minimize the risks in what we're doing? So, you know, you're right. It is a huge challenge, but I also see it as a huge opportunity, especially in Trinidad with the historical data that exists.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. There are some questions in, obviously, for the coming in, obviously, asking for the transcript of Minister Young's speech. That's one. One question was, or comment I heard about establishing a new ministry focusing on the utilization of big data. Didn't hear that in the minister's speech, but he might want to comment on that. But a question to you, Minister Young, and also Mr. Baay, you know, from where you sit and listening to the very clear way forward that you see in using big data analytics, but also the limitations when it comes to security. You know, where do you see the most urgent action needed in addressing some of those challenges, especially of finding the right data when it comes to the usage of data for the large and very data intensive energy sector? You know, what are some of the specific or most urgent needs that you see on the government side will have to, so to say, be the next few steps taken?
I don't think, Marina, we have the luxury of doing it in silos and saying, okay, well, let's focus on this area. The way I intend, I'm pushing the ministry to operate is we have to be running down parallel paths. I'm very concerned about the global environment. So we have this huge amount of data there that needs to be immediately analyzed from an emissions point of view. And that then needs to be worked into the work we're doing on carbon capture, sequestration, injection. How do we clean it up? I'm glad that NGC is leading the way in this. They are using satellite imagery to see where methane leaks are, etc., and seeing can that be monetized? How do we cap it, etc. So you have that side of it. But exactly what Paul has just said. I mean, when I went down to the south of Trinidad and was walking in the forest along with the people doing the seismic, I was asking them, how do you all choose these areas? And it's exactly what Paul said. They went back to Shell data from the 1960s that's handwritten saying this is where they shot seismic, etc. So we also need to proceed that because Trinidad and Tobago has to fast track our exploration and exploitation of our hydrocarbons, especially on the oil side. So we have to move quickly to make the data we have available that exists, make the data that we have existing at the ministry available to industry so they can employ the analytics of it, etc. And then also the current data that is coming on a day-to-day basis. It is extremely useful in the energy sector because as you analyze it, you'll see, okay, well, there is the potential for more hydrocarbon in this area, or you start planning decommissioning in a safe way. So it's a huge amount of data in the energy industry and in the energy sector. How do we utilize that immediately for these? I've just touched on a few of the needs.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And another interesting question coming from the floor concerning, you know, with the transition to digitizing the economy in Trinidad and Tobago, the question is, you know, how do citizens, you know, find their way into the sort of skill sets and how can they apply and prepare for the sort of jobs? So, you know, maybe Mr. Baay, you want to take this on first. What are the sort of opportunities that you see coming out for not just young people finishing their education, but maybe also in terms of transitioning and relearning some of the skills that you see coming out now as the country pushes for more digitalization, for finding people with the skill set in data analytics?
Yeah, I think that's a challenge, but I also think, you know, it already exists. I'll give you a really good example of that would be, you know, somebody that maybe is an expert in understanding technology, understanding data, and saying, how can I apply that in the energy business? How do I get into the energy business? Great example would be on our production side, for instance, on our producing old wells that have maybe been producing for 50 years. we're actually using AI technology on them on an hourly, actually on a minute by minute basis, where the information is gathered and then the well automatically adjusts itself based on that data. And there's two parts to this that are really key, is that it helps our ESG emissions, but it also will optimize production. As the minister said, it just makes more oil for the country, more revenue, all those good things. But the ability, I think, or the challenge for people looking to get into that part of the business isn't around whether or not, you know, they're going to become a petroleum engineer or reservoir engineer. It's looking outside of the box of that technology, something that they're learning, something that they're training for, and applying it so that it meets two criteria. One, there has to be an economic benefit of it. And number two, that economic benefit, though, can also be an environmental benefit, because those are now linked together. You can't unlink those in our business anymore. So if you can provide an environmental benefit or a social benefit or a governance benefit with the technology that you're providing, then there is that economic benefit that comes along with it. So I think that you know, that's probably the challenge, and I don't think there's sort of that one answer to the question, but it's more of an open mindset as to what you can do to help on those three fronts with the business. And for us, what we call it creating value through values, and that's really the opportunity that we see. And I think it's a huge opportunity as this business transitions from being sort of an old business to being a new business that really becomes a bit of a data business, similar to what we're seeing in the EV market, where, you know, some of the EV providers, especially if you look at Tesla, it's really not a car company, it's really a technology company. And I think that's what we're going to see with a lot of our opportunities in the energy space. A lot of them are going to become technology opportunities.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I know that a lot of the people and listeners who registered today are also in the younger segment. So I think very interesting highlight for them to really maybe have their eyes on that when pursuing their education. Minister, your talk about the incubator has generated a lot of interest. So a couple of follow-up questions. The sort of process that exists already for startups, maybe to apply to that or be considered. And also, of course, with regards to possible funding or investment, but also the question whether this incubator will act like many others and, so to say, provide some of the firms or the startups with access to the sort of energy database you talked about. So maybe just a couple of follow-ups on that one.
I think what we need to do is we need to explore it. So the incubator, the concept is that we will have persons in a sort of mentoring capacity to guide those who are getting into that space. The access to the energy data will have to be governed by private non-disclosure agreements and these types of things. To be quite blunt and to be quite honest, I'm not sure where we've reached in that area, but because of course you can't just go and give out the access to the data to any and everyone. But those who are interested in it, I think what you should do is you should inquire of the ministry, and then once you can provide legitimate reasons for it, I think there are opportunities there because there's a lot of data. So it may be that you're providing studies, it may be that you're retained by bigger firms, bigger companies to do these types of analysis, tell us what is going on in Trinidad on oil production side, what are the projections, etc. I'm not sure how it will unfold, but it is there and it exists. But as you would expect, we have to structure it, we have to regulate it. For some of the concerns that we've all touched on this morning, the introductory speaker and myself, and these concerns about security, privacy of data. But ultimately, a lot of the data is going to be made publicly available once you tap into the structure that is going to be put in place by the ministry.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Mr. Baay, another follow-up question on how big data technologies and your references to their importance in the sector would be applied and used for contractors in the oil and gas industry, and what sort of opportunities can be made available for them, contractors across, for transitioning into this sort of new phase of the sector?
Yeah, and that's, that has to work very closely, the two of us together when we talk about our contractors. To give you the example, Weatherford is the one who we're working for instance, on working with this AI technology for the wells. So, with the exchange of data between us and them allows them to take that technology all around the world. So if they can show that it works here, they can then take that technology all around the world. And so that's the opportunity, I think, for the contractors to bring us ideas. They can spend some of the R&D money, bring it to us, and then our willingness has to be on the side of trying new things. And quite frankly, as I say to our team, is if we're not failing, we're not learning. And so there is going to be these technologies that come along that don't work. And that's what the data is going to tell us. And hopefully what it'll do is tell us quicker when things are working and tell us quicker when things aren't working. And so that becomes the exchange of data between the contractors and ourselves. But we can also encourage contractors to provide us with the right product. Let's say, if we can provide them the data, then they can take it back and incorporate it and provide the right product for us, or what they think is the right product for us going forward. So it's this exchange of data. And I guess maybe, I think the privacy thing is important, but I also think that people guard their data too much. They almost treat it like a license. And that's not necessarily, I think from our point of view, we're pretty open to sharing our data because we think that sort of spurs the ideas going forward. So that's the challenge of not trying to take ownership of the data. So it's a balancing act for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And a little bit of a more controversial question for Minister Young. And I think the reference is to something that you've seen and have seen in many countries, that as the government, or very often the leadership, charts out a very ambitious course of really getting the action going into more data-based decision-making, and therefore more transparency and openness around this. Within very often the administration and bureaucracy, not everyone is sold. And so the question, I think, targets some of the doubts around some members of the bureaucracy or the administration that have not been used to working in that manner, and showing a certain bit, I think the word of the question is resistance to change or maintaining the status quo. And again, we've seen it in many countries. What do you, Minister, what do you see are the sorts of ways of selling, so to say, this agenda, not only on the outside, but also on the inside to administration and colleagues and bureaucrats that are not used to work in that manner?
That is an excellent question and observation. It's real. So we do meet resistance, and you're always going to have some element of resistance to change, because as humans, we don't immediately accept change that may seem drastic to us. So have no doubt about it. In the government's attempts to digitize, we are going to have resistance and internal resistance. It may come from people being afraid of loss of jobs. That's not the intention. And it may become, unfortunately, at times, people resistant to change of status quo because there's corruption in the status quo. And that is something that we're very conscious of. And that's one of the reasons why we want to push hard in some areas to move towards digitization, because it reduces the ability for successful corruption. So my advice to those who have to be part of the process is, look, don't immediately resist it. You can ask your questions about it, but it has to happen. We have to move to a more digitized process. We have to move towards the acceptance of digitization in our government services. I mean, as a citizen coming from private sector, I was shocked at some of these stories. So for example, in a government department, if you want to move away from a use of pure cash system to the use of online payments, or something as interim as use of credit cards and links cards, your debit cards, there was often resistance in some departments to that. You'd find machines being unplugged, etc., because it's a protection, unfortunately, of status quo. Fortunately, it's in the minority. Fortunately, I think our public service wants to become more efficient, I'm hoping, and that they will move along with us as we try to drive this process. And there was an earlier comment, Marina, about are we going to have a ministry specific to big data analytics? I don't think so. The answer is no. There's a Ministry of Digital Transformation that has to assist each ministry in driving digitization through itself. But what you're going to have is each ministry needs to look at the data information. I mean, we went through a recent exercise where I was chairing the introduction and use of something as simple as TT Travel Pass, persons entering Trinidad and Tobago when we reopened our borders. There's a huge amount of data that exists there, and there needs to be no resistance to these types of things. You look at immigration, you look at in the energy sector, some of the other areas where we have huge data inputs, production coming in. You can look at it, you can see, and you can predict, okay, well, these wells are going to be in a decline. What do we need to do on the other side to promote further exploration and production? And you look at, in the future, the timing and the levels to make sure, or to reduce drop-offs, to look at when you may have spikes. So that is getting into the data and using it. And I think the conversation is the building of the analytics, the understanding of the programs that can use it, because as an individual sitting down looking at it, it's all gibberish until you have those AI programs that go into it, and you have to program it to extract what you're looking for. So to get back to the original question, yes, there will be resistance. The government needs to drive past that resistance, because ultimately it would lead to better productivity and efficiency and a reduction of corruption. And ultimately, in conclusion, a better service to the end user, who's the population.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think probably taking two more questions, and then unfortunately we have to wrap up, but a lot of questions coming up. I think one of the references that also keeps up coming is, of course, we talked a lot about the energy sector and a bit of a focus as last year's data forum went a little bit wider, looking at the various sectors. There is also reference and question to the social sector, health sector, education, equally very important. And so again, just to explain, as this is the second iteration, colleagues and dear participants, we have a slightly different focus, but nevertheless, and maybe as a last comment, one of the questions also, where do you see the lead coming from in terms of, is there a specific sector that you see leading the charge on the usage of data analytics? What's the qualitative advantage working with the private sector and maybe take the private sector lead in certain areas? And how does this link, in your point of view, to the many other sectors that make up a healthy society, as there was a question referring to health and education?
You all will be glad to know that those exact sectors that you've identified were identified by the Prime Minister and by the Cabinet to lead the charge in the digital transformation. Health, it is absolutely essential. We've been pushing, for example, for health to have records that expand all of the public health, from the smallest healthcare center to the largest hospital, all of the patient information, etc., for the use and procurement of pharmaceuticals to ensure there's less wastage, more efficiency, these types of things. So health has been identified. Education has been identified. The agriculture has been identified. And Marina helped me. The third one that the person identified was also what was it?
Health and social sectors.
Social sector. How could I forget social sector? The drive is happening there. What we're looking to do as a government and a whole of government is every person will have an national identification card that will have your specific PIN number. So anytime you go for any government service, social, education, health, any service, it plugs into a system and we will know. So we cut out duplication, especially in social services. You'd be able to see internally the person's means. What are they getting proper access to? And what you do is you create this word that we use, efficiency. If it happens or when it happens, it will allow the resources to get to the person who deserves it the most in a most efficient manner. So those 4 ministries were identified: health, social services, education, as the priority ministries for us to get the digitization done for this one-step identification card to be used to make sure there's efficiency in services being provided to citizens.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And one very last question to Mr. Baay. As you have the minister here, of course, what are the 3 things you would like to ask him to really help you get the job done, really, merge towards a more data-based way of working that allows you as a business to really dive into data analytics? What are the next 3 steps you think that need to happen?
I think, and I know the minister and I've had this conversation privately, so I don't mind having it here. I think the data that is on the island is still somewhat protected when we look at old wells, some of the old seismic, some of the new seismic that was shot. I think there has to be a bit of a mindset change of making that available to everybody, like is done in other countries, the United States, Canada, the UK. This public data generates ideas. And that's really, that's number 1 as far as the step goes. The second thing is really, to walk the walk on the doing business on the electronic side. The business in Trinidad is still very much driven on hard copies, the written copies of things getting done. And quite frankly, that just slows the process down. And I think unnecessarily, but he hits the nail right on the head, where that's, job preservation, that's a change, that's a, sort of a shift, and it becomes trust, right? It is a shift in trust of people being confident in relying on the electronic data. So that's that. And I think the third one is just trying to get some of the various organizations in the country, especially some of the Crown Corps, to work together a little bit more closely and a little more timely. When we talk about NGC, we talk about Heritage, we talk about the ministry. There still seems to be a little bit of resistance there. And I think there's just this massive amount of data between all those organizations that still isn't being harnessed to its full benefit. But that would be my 3 if, putting me on the spot. And that's in no particular order either. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, and sorry for putting you on the spot, but I just couldn't resist having Minister Young already outlining such an ambitious agenda. I think, it very much fed into what he already pointed to. Gentlemen, time is unfortunately up. Many more questions. Thank you so very much for a super engaging, very open discussion on the topic. Again, it's something that we will continue. It's our second but not last data forum. A massive thank you. That was really exciting, interesting, and a lot to learn and to listen to for our many participants. Many thanks to both of you, Mr. Baay, Minister, and for the colleagues around this virtual room. We will continue, of course, in now 2 minutes at 11:15, the very exciting session on big data and artificial intelligence, and on how to use it to achieve the sort of business objectives we already discussed about this morning. Please leave this room and log in for the next session that starts at 11:15. Warm thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Until
Take care.
next time.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Bye-bye. Bye, Paul.